So a couple years back, as my inaugural upload to this channel, I did a video ranking the coasters at Kings Island. But since then, a few things have changed. For instance, I've changed a bit, and Kings Island has changed too. They removed Vortex, which was kind of sad, and then they added Orion, which was also kind of sad. No, I'm just kidding. It's a joke. I like Orion. Everything's fine. You know, I actually didn't even want it to be bigger than Fury, to be honest. I think it's better like that. And I think everybody else agrees with me, and we're all happy. And actually, we're really good. We're doing great. You know, we're like really, really happy, and everything's fine, and everything's great. And I am just so stoked. KI Coaster Guy here, and today... But actually, you know what? You, Carowinds. Yeah. KI Coaster Guy here, and today we are once again going to be ranking the coasters at Kings Island. And like last time, we're going to leave the kiddie coasters off of this list because I really don't care. That's why. Also, folks, let's try to keep in mind that ranking things is a totally subjective process, so don't be surprised if you disagree with me on some of this stuff, all right? It actually makes me a little nervous, to be honest, because all of these coasters pretty much have a fan base, and I'm not really looking forward to being subjected to enthusiast rage. Except, you know what? No one really seems to like Vertigo. It's kind of one of those rides that is just sort of there, and no one really talks about it much at all. Number 11. Vertigo. Vertigo is a ride that I kind of ended up being in a weird place with over the years. When it first opened back in the 90s, I was a kid, and there wasn't any way I was gonna ride that thing, even though everyone kept on telling me it was really awesome. And now, it sucks. So I guess I kind of missed out. For one thing, I'm not a huge fan of shuttle coasters, and this thing feels a bit jank at times and can be a little bit of a headbanger. But the biggest issue I have with this ride is just how slow the operations on it are. Kings Island has great ops, but this is not what I'd call a high-capacity attraction. The line for this ride sometimes just takes forever to get through, and the time between cycles just always seems so long, and it just isn't worth the wait at all. Vertigo is a ride that I just don't make a priority to ride that often when I'm at Kings Island. In fact, I'm struggling to even remember the last time I actually lined up to get on it. If I had anything positive to say about it, it's that it's not fun. It's just not really fun. Every park seems to have that ride that's rumored to come down every season. At Cedar Point, it's Wicked Twister, which I'd honestly really hate to see happen, by the way. And for Kings Island, it's Vertigo. Usually the prediction goes that they'll remove it along with Congo Falls and replace it with some bigger, higher capacity ride. I would hate to see Congo Falls go, but if they took out Vertigo and replaced it with another coaster, I'd be good with that. Number 10. Adventure Express. I'm not really sure I'm able to understand the enthusiast fascination I sometimes see around aero mine trains. I haven't ridden that many of them, but if a certain subset of the coaster community is to be believed, Adventure Express is one of the better ones, in which case, I'm not sure this type of ride is for me. As I've mentioned a few times, when I was a kid, I was afraid of coasters, and I had a friend tell me,
KI Coaster Guy, I was afraid of coasters too, but then I rode Adventure Express and realized everything was okay. It's not scary, you should ride that one.
And I was like, cool, let's do it. Because even as a child, I sounded like a 30-year-old man, even though all my friends sounded like little kids. So I got on it, and everything was going fine. But then we got to the hill near the end with the moving statues, and I thought, oh crap, here it comes. We're about to get dumped down a hill. Why did I get on this thing? I never should have listened to my idiot friend. And then you just gently roll back into the station. Now, I was relieved, but even at the time, I thought that was super weird and anticlimactic. And that's really my only true criticism of this ride. The pacing is weird. Yeah, it's not super exciting, but at the same time, it's not really supposed to be. Adventure Express is a family ride, and even though I'm not the biggest fan, my wife and kids love it. I still think this is a really great starter ride, especially for kids that are a little nervous about roller coasters. In my opinion, Adventure Express is even more tame than the Beastie, or what's now called Woodstock Express, which, by the way, why did they change the name of that ride? The Beastie was such a cute name for it. Change it back. Number 9. The Bat. I'm old enough to remember a time when this was one of the most popular coasters in the park. These days, the queue for the Bat is usually one of the shorter waits, like by a lot when I go to Kings Island, which is probably a good thing because it takes forever to walk out to this coaster and the ride is like 40 seconds long. Despite its relatively low place on this list, I actually do enjoy this ride. It's got a pretty fun layout that really whips you around in spots, especially if you get a back row ride. A front row ride on the Bat is also a great time. On the other hand, it's getting a a little long in the tooth at this point, and the designs for roller coaster track, trains, seats, and restraints have come a long way since this coaster debuted back in '93. To me, that all adds up to a ride that just feels a little janky and jerky compared to a more modern coaster, as well as just feeling a little too short. Still, the Bat is one of only 5 remaining aerodynamic suspended coasters operating worldwide, so this is one I really hope Kings Island keeps running and in good repair for a really long time. Number 8, Flight of Fear. This used to be the most terrifying ride at the park to me when I was a kid. It's not quite as impressive now, but I still enjoy a ride on Flight of Fear, particularly the launch. The rest of the layout is okay. I get some decent hang time on some of the inversions, and it has a low to the ground moment or two that I really enjoy. But it's also another one of those coasters that, in my opinion, is getting a little rough with age. I also find that the trains are super uncomfortable on this ride. RMC trains have nothing on this thing in the lack of comfort department. Still, a good ride to have at the park for the launch and the fact that it's indoor. It's definitely nice that when the other coasters are down for weather, you can get in line for this one. I also still think this is probably the ride at Kings Island with the best theming. Number 7, The Racer. One thing I really love about this ride is most of the time, you don't wait that long to get on this. Over the last couple years, one thing I hadn't really loved about it is that it was running pretty rough. Particularly on the red side, which seemed to be the only side open when I usually go during the week, unless it was like really busy or something. Over the off season this past year though, they had Gravity Group come in and do some pretty extensive track work to it, and I'm happy to say it's running much better now. There's nothing particularly exciting about this ride to me, but you do get some decent airtime on it, and I never really mind hopping on for a quick ride. I do still think it's really cool that the first real coaster at the park is still there, and I appreciate the effort they put into maintaining it. Number 6, The Beast. This is gonna make some people mad, but that's okay. The Beast would probably be higher on this list for me, but honestly, in my opinion, this ride is running way too rough these days, and I'd really like to see it get some track work. The other thing is that the layout, at least in my opinion, is a little boring in spots. The Beast has been Kings Island's signature ride as long as I've been alive, but these days, I think it's the most overrated ride in the park. Definitely innovative for its time, definitely a unique ride given the way it's situated in the park, going through the woods and everything. I think it's really cool that it's there, but I'll probably continue only riding this one every once in a while until it gets a little track work. I can't wait to hear all about how it isn't rough or whatever, I just need to get good. To a certain extent, calling a coaster rough is kind of a subjective thing, but I guess a good rule of thumb for me is that if a coaster gives you a headache after riding it, it's probably a little bit too rough. Number 5, Backlot Stunt Coaster. Yep, I'm putting Backlot Stunt Coaster above the Beast. These two might end up flipped if the Beast was running better. We'll just call it extenuating circumstances, but also I think this is a pretty good ride in its own right. Backlot Stunt Coaster does a lot of things right. It's a family ride that isn't boring. That first launch isn't super fast or powerful, but it feels a lot more forceful than it looks like it would just watching it from the queue. It has some great moments, including that cute little pyrotechnics break in that dark tunnel, and I've just never really had a bad ride on this. This ride didn't make any huge contributions to the roller coaster world like the Beast did, and it won't ever be an ace landmark, but I think this is one of the most underrated rides in the park. Number 4, Banshee. This has been one of my favorite coasters at Kings Island since I took my first ride on it. The main reason this ride isn't a slot or two higher for me is because it hasn't been running as well in my opinion lately. It's gotten a little rough. Man, we're talking a lot about coasters being rough in this video, and I'm starting to feel a little self-conscious about it. The thing is, I've been hearing people say this about Banshee for a few years now, and I really didn't agree until I took a ride on it last year, and let's just say it was more than a slight rattle. On the positive side though, I think this ride has a fantastic layout. I love the drop on this ride without the little pre-drop. The inversions are great, particularly the 0G roll near the end of the ride. I agree with the general consensus that the front row is where it's at on Banshee, but don't sleep on a back row ride on this either. You really get whipped down that drop and through the rest of the layout in the back. Also, man, is this thing just a people eater. The line moves super fast and the wait is rarely over an hour wait, even on a busy day in my experience. Number 3, Diamondback. I know a lot of people out there in the Thuzy world aren't the biggest fans of B&M hypers like this, and I get why they aren't everyone's favorite, but at the same time, not everything needs to be Steel Vengeance or Sky Rush. I'm glad rides like this exist. Diamondback has one of the best first drops in the park. It's fast, it's full of floater airtime. It also just looks great in the park. If there's one thing I think we should all be able to agree about when it comes to B&M hypers and Gigas, it's that they really do enhance a park's skyline. I think they have this kind of World Serpent or Shenron from Dragon Ball Z thing going on for them, and they're just great to look at. I also love the splashdown on this one. It just looks great. Number 2, Orion. Okay, so we had some fun earlier, and I share in the disappointment much of the Kings Island community, as well as the coaster community at large, have about the way Kings Island decided to do this ride. I really do wish they had broke Fury's height record, but beyond that, a few more elements to this ride would have been really nice. All that being said, I really can't get enough of this coaster. I can't help myself. It's a lot of fun. It's got a phenomenal first drop, and even though I was initially a little disappointed in that wave turn, it's really grown on me. Everyone seems to really focus on that last little hill before the brake run as the ride's standout element, and I like that moment of the ride too, but I really think the entire second half of Orion is really fun, especially that speed hill, which I always end up getting some really good airtime on. I went back and forth between whether or not to put this at the number 1 slot because right now, this is my favorite ride at Kings Island. I don't necessarily think it's the best, but it is my favorite. Also, everything I said a couple minutes ago about how I like the way these types of rides look applies here as well, except for the splashdown. I'm aware Orion doesn't have a splashdown, and you're probably thinking, okay, well, you didn't need to say that, but you'd be really surprised. Having a Giga so close by has been really a blast, and to those of you typing in the comments that it's actually a hyper, not a Giga, all I have to say to that is... And also its drop is exactly the same height as Millennium Force, so yes, it is a Giga. Number 1, Mystic Timbers. This is a ride that has seriously grown on me over the last few years. Now that's not to say I didn't like it before, but it's one of those things where the more I ride it, the better it gets, which is nice, since a lot of rides you kind of end up getting a little desensitized to over time. Mystic has a great first drop, even though it's not even that tall. The layout is just bonkers well paced. There's really no downtime in this ride. You're just going from element to element, and the transitions just feel so fluid. And also, even though this ride only reaches a top speed of 53 miles per hour, which is, not actually all that fast for a roller coaster, it feels incredibly fast to me. It looks like you're really blowing past everything around you when you're on this ride. This is such a cliche at this point, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Mystic Timbers is proof that stats aren't really what make a ride great. When I first heard someone say they thought this was the best coaster in the park, I didn't really understand or agree with that, but now I'm pretty sure I do. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss anything. And as always, folks, a like rating is always appreciated. Anyway, that all clear means I'm up, and out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.